Good evening. We've been waiting for weeks for this announcement, and this afternoon it finally came, the route out of lockdown. The Prime Minister set out his cautious plan earlier, pinpointing exactly what we'll be able to do and when. If all goes to plan, we should be back to some sort of normality by June the 21st. For many families and businesses right across the capital, it's welcomed news. While many will be working out when they can see friends and family again in the flesh and maybe go on holiday, others are still cautious about the next step. So what is the roadmap? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Thanks, Charlene. Well, there are plenty of dates and details, and they don't come without their ifs or buts. I think the best way to look at the PM's plan is to think of it as our 4 steps to freedom. Let's begin with step 1, which has 2 key dates. March 8th will see all pupils returning to schools, along with some students. And one person will be allowed to meet with one other person in outdoor spaces. And if all that goes to plan, the rule of 6 will be back from March the 29th and will apply to outdoor spaces and gardens. Some sports facilities like tennis courts and football pitches will reopen too. And stay-at-home rules will end. Step 2, by April the 12th at the earliest, pubs and restaurants should be allowed to serve people outside. And hairdressers, nail salons, non-essential shops and outdoor attractions will open their doors too. Step 3, by May 17th at the earliest, and 2 households of groups of up to 6 people should be allowed to mix indoors, and limited crowds will be allowed at sporting events. Step 4, from June the 21st at the earliest, all remaining restrictions on social contact could be lifted, meaning nightclubs could finally reopen, and large events may be allowed to go ahead too. That is if, and only if, cases do not start rising rapidly again or a new variant doesn't spread. For some parts of London's economy, the journey out of lockdown will be painfully slow. Bars, restaurants, shops and theatres must wait even longer before they can reopen. So London's parks and open spaces will continue to be a magnet for people with nowhere else to go. In Primrose Hill, there was only one topic of conversation today, the roadmap.
Some of the shops should open because people are really suffering.
They need to ease these rules. Because it's affecting us and affecting badly our children because they don't understand.
If we come out too early again, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again, and that's just worse for everyone altogether. We're better off just keeping still until everyone's been vaccinated.
Prime Minister!
In the Commons, the Prime Minister offered a sobering rider to his roadmap.
We cannot escape the fact that lifting lockdown will result in more cases, more hospitalisations and, sadly, more deaths.
There would be a gap of at least 5 weeks between each step. So from April the 12th,
we will begin to reopen our pubs and restaurants outdoors, and honourable members will be relieved there will be no curfew and the Scotch egg debate will be over because there will be no requirement for alcohol to be accompanied by a substantial meal.
But an end to all COVID rules was subject to a number of reviews.
One will assess how long we need to maintain social distancing and face masks. This will also inform guidance on working from home, which should continue wherever possible until this review is complete.
COVID has devastated London's bars and restaurants. This one in Streatham has been trying to stay in business with takeaways. It'll be at least another 12 weeks before diners are allowed back in.
We know that we've got to wait to see what the science is telling us. We understand that message. But this is hard financially on not just us, but all the rest of the community and the industry, and we need more financial support.
Disappointment too for anyone who relies on a gym or leisure centre for their mental and physical well-being. They're unlikely to open for at least 7 weeks.
It's absolutely unprecedented what has happened, and we understand why, but obviously any business that relies on people coming in and paying money to transact and has no customers has a big problem.
But there are concessions for some outdoor activities. Golf courses and tennis courts will get an early release from lockdown.
It's a great sport because it's such a big area. A tennis court is a huge area. You're not going to get close to anybody at all. We've got special guidelines, in and out, in some gates, out that gate. So nobody's going to get close to anybody. It's going to be safe, controlled.
Lockdown has been tough for everyone. It's not over yet, but the end is in sight. Simon Harris, ITV News, Ealing.
Good evening. As pupils, parents and teachers count down to schools reopening on March the 8th, head teachers have been telling us about the challenges ahead. Boris Johnson has said that every secondary school pupil will have to be tested 3 times on site for the first 3 weeks and make sure that pupils test themselves at home twice a week. For some of the capital's big inner city schools, that's sorting logistics for thousands and thousands of pupils, let alone making sure every pupil wears a face mask indoors if they can't socially distance. One head teacher told us it's left them with very difficult challenges to work out, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
The learning curve got a little steeper today with an extra lesson in COVID security. Face masks are now part of the uniform in secondary school classrooms. At the Cumberland School in Plaistow, pupils whose parents are essential workers got an early taste of what their classmates can expect when they return on March the 8th. Some were clearly struggling with the new rule. Others, like Callum, who has asthma, are excused.
People might not recognise you because they have to ask for your name and then who are you, and then it gets a bit frustrating.
Most people don't like the masks, but some people are used to them because they have to wear it for so long.
Everyone's getting very bothered by the masks in the school. So basically, me with my asthma, I feel a bit sad for them because they have to wear them when I can't.
Until today, mask wearing was confined to school corridors. At Cumberland, the walk on the left rule also helps social distancing.
Fantastic reasoning, and well done to refer to Bible teachings in your reasoning. That's absolutely fantastic.
Masks in class will also be a challenge for staff.
The teacher being able to see who is talking and be able to respond to them. I think we've also got quite a unique situation in the sense that we've got a number of students that are new to English, and so lip reading is also really important for them.
Some teaching unions have warned that a mass return to school would be reckless, but the Prime Minister visiting a school in Lewisham insisted government scientists had given him their backing.
They're absolutely convinced that this is the right thing to do, get pupils back into school on March the 8th.
Schools have spent the last 24 hours getting up to speed on what's expected of them. Face masks are just one of the measures ordered by ministers to try to keep a lid on infection rates. Compulsory testing of pupils and staff is another. At Cumberland, it means testing all 1,500 pupils every week. That's 300 a day.
It's going to be an enormous challenge. However, it's one that we are looking forward to. It's one that we've been waiting for a very long time. We need our students back. The best place for students is to come back to school.
Staff will be tested twice a week, but 3 weeks after the schools reopen, the responsibility for testing pupils will be passed to parents. Simon Harris, ITV News, Plaistow.
As Ron Kay just touched on, Transport for London is just weeks away from its next financial crisis. City Hall and the government are at a crucial stage in their talks to agree a new bailout with TfL. And its commissioner, Andy Byford, thinks passenger numbers are likely to stay low after lockdown because commuters will no longer tolerate crammed tubes and buses. Our political correspondent, Simon Harris, reports.
Rush hour shouldn't look like this. On the Piccadilly line this week, some carriages were almost empty. Once they would have been packed with morning commuters and Heathrow travellers. But for those who have to travel during lockdown, life underground has changed.
There's always a place to sit, even in peak hour.
You haven't got the armpits in your faces and whatever else.
You can see like the TfL staff cleaning the handrails and things like that, and it's much neater.
It feels okay, it feels kind of safe, everyone's wearing masks.
It's all very different from a year ago, when tube passengers thought nothing of doing the conga, when the daily commute inevitably meant a rush hour crush, when social distancing didn't exist. And COVID may have a lasting impact on what Londoners will tolerate in future.
One thing I do think is true is that I don't think people will find it societally acceptable to be crammed into tubes and buses the way they once were.
That's just one of the challenges facing TfL as it tries to overcome a catastrophic loss of income caused by lockdown and working from home.
We've got to start looking long term. COVID is here to stay for some time. We've got to look at putting the money in so that transport in London can keep moving. So as people return to work, they're able to get around the city safely. And let's not forget, London is the engine for this country. We need people back to work safely so we can keep our economy going.
The government has given TfL £3.4 billion in bailouts since the start of the pandemic. It's asking ministers for a further £3 billion to keep it afloat for another 12 months, plus a further £1.6 billion every year until 2030. But the negotiations are complicated by the prickly relationship between Tory ministers and a Labour mayor.
He upsets them all. I think he takes great pleasure from it, but he has to understand that the consequence of that is that ministers in all of the departments of state sitting around the cabinet table are asking themselves, why do we have to make this guy look good? All he does is slag us off at every opportunity.
Hardly surprising then that Mr Byford describes the process as intense and tough and the most crucial in TfL's history.
My job is to negotiate a path between what the mayor wants, what the government wants, and ultimately to London's benefit. So my job's apolitical. I'm not interested in the politics.
The end of the pandemic might be in sight, but TfL bosses think 1/5 of the income from passengers will still be missing 2 years from now. Simon Harris, ITV News.